Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is Magic Rules you may be getting wrong. It happens to the best of us sometimes. I've made videos in the past where I talk about the things that I've gotten wrong, and even as someone who has been playing the game for almost 30 years, it does happen from time to time. It is the most complicated game on the planet, and I hear questions and comments from people all the time. That's how this series started, looking at the comments and seeing the things that people say, the misconceptions they have about how the game is played. I'll quickly go over some of the funny things that I've heard in the comments of how people were playing this game wrong. One guy said blockers tap. So he thought, or his playgroup thought, that when you blocked with the creature, it tapped. Of course, they had already figured out that's not how it works, so they stopped doing it. Untap mana after countering. You untap your mana if something is countered is one of the funniest ones I've ever heard. So in other words, if I cast a spell, let's say I tap 5 mana, somebody counters that spell. Well, since I didn't actually resolve the spell, then I get to untap the mana that I used to cast that spell. That's a funny one. I have come across people that played the game that way. Countering the spell sends it back to your hand is another funny one. I came across a guy once who, him and all his friends, in fact, played this way. They did not realize that when a spell got countered, it then went to your graveyard. They thought it went back to your hand. Essentially, every counter spell was a remand. So I'm wondering what they thought a remand exactly was. That's essentially how they use counter spells. Wish cards, get your commander out of the command zone is one I've seen. Any of those wish cards that get a card from outside of the game, people assumed that your command zone was outside of the game. Of course, it is not. It is actually a zone in the game while you're playing. So no, wish cards do not work there. One guy commented that the way his group used to play is that your mana doesn't drain away. So essentially, everyone has a crew fix in play. Your mana always stays in your mana pool and never drains as you change phases and stuff. That would make for an interesting game. Maybe the funniest one I've ever heard. A patron told me this one. Adding mana with a ritual meant tutoring for the lands. So in other words, if you cast a dark ritual, that meant go tutor your library for 3 swamps, I guess? Pretty funny one. And of course, there are the interactions on the videos that I've made clarifying rules where people tell me I'm wrong. That one is probably the one that I find the most interesting. When I clarify rules in my rules videos and people tell me, no, you're absolutely wrong. For example, the most popular video on my entire channel talking about the biggest misconception of how removing the source of an effect does not get rid of the effect after it's already on the stack. I still have people telling me that that's wrong. Fundamental interaction in the game of Magic, and people aren't doing it correctly. And of course, my Teferi's protection video. That's probably the worst culprit of this, where here I am making a video. I guess that wasn't a rules video, but it was a video about how you can still kill someone with commander damage after they've resolved a Teferi's protection. And of course, there's a lot of people out there that think protection from everything literally means protection from everything, and it doesn't. I had to make an entire video talking about protection to clarify the rules on that because it is one of the most misunderstood abilities in the entire game, I think. A lot of people saying you can't attack someone once a Teferi's protection has been resolved, and of course you absolutely can. And in fact, this was very relevant in a game I just played with my patrons where I resolved a Teferi's protection, and my other opponent, all of his creatures were goaded, so he had to attack someone, and he could very much attack me because I was open. He could very easily attack me without losing any of his creatures, so it was very relevant in that game. So yes, you absolutely can attack someone once they have a Teferi's protection resolved. People get it wrong all the time. It's fine. We all do it, but I'm trying to clarify these in these rules videos. That's why I do it the way I do rather than just answering people in the comments. I do it this way so that possibly I will be helping other people as well. And in this edition particularly, we'll be talking specifically about interactions that work with certain commanders. So if you have any of these specific commander decks, you might find particular interest in this video. So let's get to the first one. Hey Demo, my question involves interactions with Ancient Silver Dragon, 2/2 Flying Drake tokens, and Alandra Sky Dreamer. What I want to do is attack with the dragon and all available Drake tokens, and then the dragon deals combat damage. I roll a d20, and if I roll a 5 or higher, higher, I get the 5th card draw and triggers my Alendra's ability to pump my Drakes. And I already know where he's going with this question. I'm sure a lot of you guys do as well. He wants to know, can I apply the pump ability to my Drakes before they have dealt damage? Or does the dragon and all Drakes deal damage first, then I roll the d20 and the ability is wasted? And the answer, of course, is yes, that is how it works. Of course, Alandra says, whenever you draw your 5th card each turn, Alandra and Drakes you control each get +X until end of turn where X is the number of cards in your hand. Pretty great pump effect. But of course, drawing your 5th card each turn isn't the easiest thing in the world, but you can do it with your Ancient Silver Dragon. Of course, that says when it deals combat damage, roll a d20, draw cards equal to the result. So that's why they're saying the 5 or higher. If you get 5 or higher, of course, and in fact, you probably only need a 4 because you've drawn your card for turn. So you've already drawn at least 1 card. So you really only need a 4 or higher, and you will get the trigger off your commander. But of course, as I talked about in my combat video, one of my first Magic Rules video was just talking about how combat works, because man, there is a lot of misconceptions there with combat. All damage is done at the same time when your creatures connect, right? All your Drakes will connect, your Alandra will connect, and your Ancient Silver Dragon will all connect exactly at the same time. And any damage triggers that happen, you will put them on the stack in order of how you want. But of course, your Drakes have already done damage, so yes, the pump effect will be wasted. However, if you want to actually make this work, there is a way to do it. And of course, you can do it by giving your Ancient Silver Dragon first strike. Now it's going to deal its damage first before your Drakes and your commander deal the damage, because of course, first strike damage is done before the normal damage step. So if your Ancient Silver Dragon has first strike, you'll get in for damage first with it, then you'll draw all the cards, then you'll get the pump effect, then we will move to the normal damage step, and likely you'll kill your opponent with all the damage you're going to be dealing. So that is a way to make that interaction work. Moving along, how does Chatterfang Squirrel General interact with Necrosynthesis? Would the counters go on Chatterfang before or after the +X -X? Okay, let's take a look at those cards. And of course, Chatterfang I'm very familiar with. Most people are. And I'm assuming we're referring to this ability at the bottom. Pay a black, sacrifice X squirrels. Target creature gets +X -X until end of turn. And Necrosynthesis is an enchantment that I wasn't nearly as familiar with, but it's pretty good. Enchanted creature has, whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. When enchanted creature dies, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the power of one of those cards, and put it into your hand. Their question, of course, is would the counters go on Chatterfang before or after the +X -X? So obviously what we want to do here is sacrifice a bunch of squirrels, and of course when those squirrels die, the Necrosynthesis will trigger and put counters on, I'm guessing, our commander. Regardless of where you're putting the counters, the answer is yes, the counters will go on first. So how this works, again, the colon, as I say all the time, is so important in an activated ability, which of course this is. Everything that happens before the colon is the activation cost, and what happens after is the effect you're getting from it. So to activate this ability, we will pay black and we will sacrifice, let's say, 4 squirrels. Those squirrels will then die when we activate this ability. The ability will then go on the stack because we've now activated it. Of course, because we've sacrificed 4 squirrels, our Necrosynthesis will then trigger, because this is a triggered ability. Whenever, when, or at, of course, are the words you're looking for there. Whenever another creature dies. So of course, that condition has happened. 4 creatures have died. So we will put 4 +1/+1 counters on this creature, and I'm assuming this is on your commander, the Chatterfang. Let's just say that's what we're doing here for this example. So your Chatterfang ability of giving a creature +X -X is on the stack, and then the Necrosynthesis abilities go on the stack. So of course, because they went on after, they will resolve first, right? First in, last out is how the stack always works. Now, the interesting part here is, of course, target creature gets +X -X. You do have to pick the target for this ability when it goes on the stack. So before the Necrosynthesis resolves, we will have to pick a target here. So if you're planning on using this on your commander, you will have to pick that target immediately. However, of course, the ability hasn't resolved yet, so you don't have to worry about killing your commander here. The Necrosynthesis will resolve first. We will put 4 +1/+1 counters on our commander, on the Chatterfang. So now it is a 7/7, and then the Chatterfang ability will resolve, giving it +4 -4, and it will become an 11/3. So I think that's the interaction you're looking for there, right? Essentially, the answer is absolutely the Necrosynthesis will resolve before the Chatterfang ability ability resolves. I'm pretty sure that's clear enough. Moving on, I've always been curious. I play an Isshin 2 Heavens as one deck and play Commissaire Severine Rain in the deck with multiple token generators. If you go to combat, attack and organize the stack so she resolves after I've made more tapped and attacking tokens. Does she look only at the original creatures that declared attacks or every attacking creature? It really depends on the wording of the card here. In a lot of situations, the answer would be no, and in other situations, the answer would be yes. So let's look at the cards, of course. Isshin, of course, says if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So, of course, that happens only on the declare attacker step. That is the only time your Isshin is going to actually do anything. And of course, it's going to make that thing happen an additional time. This is not a replacement effect, even though it does say if, it's not doing it if instead, it's doing if in addition. So it's going to do the original effect, and then you're going to do that effect again. Commissaire Severine Rain says, whenever Commissaire Severine Rain attacks, each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of other attacking creatures. So the thinking here is I'm going to create tapped and attacking creatures during declare attacker's step. I'm guessing this is some effect that you're using with your Isshin. I wasn't given a specific card here, so I'll just use one that works. Flame Rush Rider. When it attacks, create a token that's a copy of another target attacking creature that's tapped and attacking. Exile the token at the end of combat. So with our commander, I mean, this is a card I imagine some people play in their Isshin decks because when it attacks, I'm going to create a token of another creature that's tapped and attacking. And of course, Isshin will make this happen again because a creature attacking is causing an ability to trigger, right? So my Flame Rush Rider will trigger again. So I'll create 2 tapped and attacking tokens. So what is Commissaire Severine Rain going to do here? Well, whenever Commissaire Severine Rain attacks, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life. So that is going to trigger twice, obviously, because Isshin is making it trigger twice. However, it says where X is the number of other attacking creatures. So what this card is looking for is the number of other attacking creatures. That's it. It's not looking for the number of creatures that were declared as an attacker. So again, as you already mentioned, if we are stacking them appropriately, and of course, we want to stack the Flame Rush Rider after the Commissary Severine Rain, so it resolves first, I am going to attack with my Flame Rush Rider and my Commissaire, and I'm going to get both triggers. I'll put the Commissaire on there first, the Flame Rush Rider second. The Flame Rush Rider will resolve first, and of course, it's going to get doubled. I will choose a creature to copy, whatever that may be. It has to be another attacking creature, so let's just pretend we have another attacking creature on the battlefield. I will resolve Flame Rush Rider, and I will resolve the Isshin copy of the ability, creating 2 tokens that are tapped and attacking. Then after all of that's done, my Commissaire ability and the copy will also resolve. And when they resolve, they'll say, okay, well, I'm looking for how many other attacking creatures there are, and it will see the creatures that have been created with that token creation ability. So yes, it will see the other creatures that are in play. Whatever that number is, if you created 100 token creatures that are attacking your opponents, your Commissaire will just want to count the number. Whatever that number is of other attacking creatures, it will include all of those. And of course, it will do that with the copy of the ability as well. So yes, that does work there. I have a Stella Lee wild card question. How does she work on the infinite loop stack with her effect versus Doomblade or basically targeted removal cards on the stack? Not quick second cards, which I believe they mean split second cards, because of course, split second means you can't interact with the stack. Can you stop her from going infinite with Doomblade? So, I didn't even know what card we were talking about here. Stella Lee, wild card? What's that? It is a commander from, I guess, the Outlaws of Thunder Junction commander precons. 1 red and a blue, human rogue, 2/4. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, exile top card of your library. Until your end of your next turn, you may play it, and has tap, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Activate only if you cast 3 or more spells this turn. So of course, I imagine a lot of people are doing storm decks here, and they probably are going infinite by using untappers is my guess here. I think if you cast a spell like a Twiddle that untaps your creature, and of course stack interaction again is super important here. I'm not familiar with this commander at all. I'm guessing people are doing storm-like scenarios. You know, I'm guessing they're doing the Twiddle effects. That's my guess. That's what I did with the Nostro deck that I made, which is very similar, where you want to be casting lots of stuff, and of course it has has a tap ability. So I have a twiddle, I cast it, tap or untap target artifact, creature, or land. So I untap my commander so that I can use the ability again. I'm not sure exactly what the infinite scenario here is. It doesn't really matter. What matters is this individual is saying, well, how can I kill this commander while that infinite scenario is happening? And again, I'm guessing the infinite scenario here involves someone untapping and tapping this guy to constantly keep copying spells that untap it or tap it. That's my guess. There's almost no scenario where you can't do this, but because this commander has a tapping ability, as soon as you tap it to use the ability, you can respond by Doomblading it, right? I mean, let's do a much more common scenario that is the infinite tapping scenario, like a Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker, right? I have my Kiki-Jiki and my Deceiver Exarch. I'm gonna go infinite here because I tap to create a token copy of a non-legendary creature, which is my Deceiver Exarch. When the token enters the battlefield, I use it to untap my Kiki-Jiki and then continue the process to make an infinite amount of tokens that I can attack my opponents with and kill them. The first time you tap your Kiki-Jiki to create a token copy, your opponent can now respond. The Kiki-Jiki is tapped. The untap ability is on the stack. It has not resolved yet. Before anything can resolve off the stack, again, except for those split-second effects, you have to give your opponents an opportunity to respond. You can hold priority, sure, but your Kiki-Jiki is tapped. Holding priority will do nothing here because, of course, your Kiki-Jiki hasn't actually untapped yet, so you can't use its ability until it untaps. So as soon as your opponent taps the Kiki-Jiki to create a token copy of the Deceiver Exarch, sure, they will get the copy. Again, we're not removing that ability from the stack, but we Doomblade that Kiki-Jiki, now it's dead, then the Deceiver Exarch ability resolves and I can untap the Kiki-Jiki, but it's no longer there. So that doesn't do anything, right? So it's actually, even though that can be a very scary combo and Kiki-Jiki is a very scary card, it's actually very easy to break that up. All you do is just kill the Kiki-Jiki in response to the first tap ability. So with Stella Lee, again, I'm not sure exactly what the infinite scenario here is, but you can do the same thing. As soon as your opponent taps this to copy whatever instant or sorcery spell they want to copy, you just cast your Doomblade and kill it. And now what do? I mean, they can do stuff, obviously. They will still get the copy effect that they are looking for, but their commander's dead. So they're going to have to let everything on the stack resolve unless somehow they can cast their commander at instant speed, and then it also has haste so they can use the ability right away. I mean, it's highly unlikely they'll be able to continue whatever they were doing in the infinite scenario. And by the way, since we're on the topic of split second, I will bring up a card here, Sudden Death. I'm making a card recommendation in one of my rules videos. Here is a card that really sees no play in the commander format at all. And of course, we all know split second is fantastic in the commander format. This card also happens to have some of the coolest art. I really like the art on this card a lot. Very unique art. 1 black instant has split second. Target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. So of course, this is not a fantastic card for removal in the commander format typically, but in a situation like this, it's fantastic. It's going to kill that Stella Lee wildcard, and your opponent will not be able to respond. They won't be able to untap their Stella Lee. They won't be able to counter it. They likely won't be able to do anything. So if you have a buddy with a Stella Lee deck and he's always going off, and since you're playing Doomblade, I imagine your deck is black, might want to give Sudden Death a try because that will break up that combo real quick. All right, we will end off with, could someone shed some light on how the last ruling works with the Great Synthesis last ability? Do I need to put the spells in my hand on the stack at once? Can I let any resolve and then put more on the stack? If I draw more cards during this process, can I play them for free? So basically, they just want to know how this card works, and this very much gets into timing issues that I talked about in my last video. So Jin-Gitaxias is the actual card here. 3 blue, Phyrexian Praetor, 5/5 with a bunch of abilities, but essentially we are transforming it into the Great Synthesis, which is on the back, and obviously they're referring to the last ability here. So it says you may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. Exile the Great Synthesis, then return it to the battlefield. So as with everything I've been talking about about in this video, right? Of course, stack interaction is so important here. So what's going to happen, of course, like with all sagas, we're going to put the lore counter on here, and then this ability will go on the stack. So this ability goes on the stack like it would with anything. And then, of course, just like I said in the last one, our opponents can now respond if they want to do anything before this ability resolves, right? Nothing is actually happening here until this ability resolves. So assuming our opponents have done whatever that is they want to do, we can now resolve our ability. And the ability says you may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana costs. Okay, let's do that. So let's start casting spells. All the spells that you are casting are happening during the resolution. You can cast them in any order you want. Timing restrictions are completely ignored here. Again, just like madness or any of the other things that I talked about in other Magic Rules videos, whenever something says you can just go nuts casting stuff, obviously that means you can completely ignore timing restrictions there, right? You just cast whatever you want from your hand without paying its mana cost, right? The ability is still on the stack. It's resolving and we're casting spells. And by the way, any effects that you get from those spells, say you cast a Wrath of God or something like that, that will happen after this completely resolves. That's also important to note. So everything you're casting, all the creatures and the everything, all of that's going to go on the stack and resolve after this ability resolves. So if I cast a creature with this ability and then I want to cast an aura to put on that creature, sorry, you can't do that. The creature has not entered the battlefield yet. It won't do so until this ability has entirely resolved. So I think that clarifies part of what's going on here. The other really important part that probably needs to be clarified that you're curious about is whenever a ability does a whole bunch of different things, the order in which those things happen written on the card is very important. And when you have a period, that can be really important too, right? So this ability says you may cast any number of things from your hand, period. Then we move on to another ability, exile the Great Synthesis, then return it to the battlefield. Those things will happen in that order. Whenever you have a bunch of things happening in order on a card for a certain ability or spell, it happens in that order. So you're going to cast all those things. Cast until I'm done casting. When I'm done casting all those things, then I will move on to the next part, which says exile the Great Synthesis and return it to the battlefield. Once that happens, you're done. You can't now start casting stuff again. You're done with a free casting of spells. So I think that for the most part, clarifies how that ability works. And that is it for this time. Another Magic Rules video covering some of my viewers' questions. If you have any burning questions about how the game of Magic works, let me know in the comments below and maybe I'll answer it in the next Magic Rules video. That is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.